Welcome to my views and news. Viewers, a few days ago, Oromia regional government it made an offer to the Oromo Liberation Army for a dialogue to find a peaceful solution to the years-long conflict in Oromia. Before that, OLA issued a manifesto of its demands, of its objectives in January. We could not cover this development in detail. What are the future prospects of peace talks between Oromo Liberation Army and Ethiopian government? What are OLA's demands? Are these demands doable? And is government sincerely pursuing diplomatic option to resolve the conflict in Oromia? In this video, I'll focus on what led to this stage. Why can't federal government, Oromia regional government continue military operation against Oromo Liberation Army? Is there any parallel between Tigray conflict and the conflict in Oromia? Can the strategy adopted by ENDF and federal government in Tigray be emulated in Oromia? And secondly, I want to share with you my analysis about the massive support which OLA has managed to gain in Oromia in recent months, you can say. Who is supporting OLA? People in government, opposition, details for you. Firstly, how did the two parties reach this stage? Because a few months ago, federal government, Oromia regional government, they were calling OLA as bandits. They still call them Shene. And they were saying that the only solution was eradication of this group. What happened after that? We saw that the military operations against Oromo Liberation Army could not produce significant results. Why is that? TDF, which was an army, it has been disarmed. And it has handed over heavy weapons. Why can't OLA be handled? Fighting in Oromia, conflict in Oromia and in Tigray are different. Oromia, a large region. Tigray is small. It is almost impossible to lay siege to Oromia, to lay siege to those areas where OLA is based. I mean, you cannot put entire Valaga under siege. People still move between Valaga and Addis Ababa, Valaga and Gambala, Valaga and BG. You cannot lay siege to Valaga like siege was laid to Tigray. 2-year-long siege still continuing. If you lay siege to Valaga, it will meet with stiff public resistance. Millions of people live there, Oromos, Amharas. Secondly, well, I'm discussing Valaga because Valaga is the stronghold of Oromo Liberation Army. Secondly, Valaga shares borders with neighboring regions, with other countries too. From Valaga, you can reach South Sudan and you can enter Sudan as well through BG. And both Sudan, South Sudan have been hosting OLA fighters in the past. Ethiopian government has been accusing these countries of backing OLA. And on southern front, we know that OLA fighters, they have been seen moving to Kenya from southern Oromia, to and from. So OLA does have its presence there. In neighboring countries, OLA has presence. and Ethiopian forces were never in a position to man all borders to lay complete siege to Valaga. Unlike Tigray, where we know that Eritrea, a neighboring country, Eritrea deployed its forces on border, and then Sudan, Tigray's link with Sudan was cut off when Eritrea and Amhara ENDF took control of Western Tigray. So here dynamics different in Oromia, and Tigray did not have backing from Eritrea, though it got some support from Sudan, but then the link was severed as Volkayat came under the control of ENDF and Eritrean forces. Here still OLA fighters can enter Sudan, South Sudan especially. They have carried out attacks in Gambela. Gambela shares border with neighboring country. The second difference is that Valaga has borders with areas which host OLA fighters. And thirdly, terrain is different, Tigray and Valaga. Valaga's terrain, I think, suits this type of fighting, guerrilla warfare, and public support. In both cases, public supported Tigray fighters too, public supporting OLA fighters too. But problem is that in Tigray, people were dying of hunger because of siege. They were not in a position. They were not in a position to continue support for TDF. They were not in a position to support TDF in different forms. But in Valaga, since Valaga is not under complete siege, and Valaga is very fertile as well, so people can support OLA, support ongoing in the parts of Oromia as well. So that is why the strategy adopted by federal government and Eritrean military of strategy of siege in Tigray cannot work in Oromia. And we've seen that despite several operations launched against Oromo Liberation Army, OLA could not be considerably weakened. And after a successful agreement reached in Pretoria between TPLF and Ethiopian government, government maybe saw a chance that there could be similar peace process for Oromia. Though some sections, part of the government were advocating that there should be a big operation against Oromo Liberation Army. When the operation was being planned, we saw a letter written by Oromia regional parliament members. Dozens of members, I think around 60, 70, wrote a letter to Ethiopian PM, Ethiopian Parliament Speaker of HOPR, and they urged the government to start talks with Oromo Liberation Army. Government remained silent. OLA in January issued its manifesto of its demands. OLA never said that it wanted a separate Oromia country. OLA never used the word secession in its writings. It always says self-determination, self-rule. Oromia with all its interests protected. That is what OLA wants, broadly speaking. So it means that talks are possible with OLA because OLA is not a secessionist force. OLA's manifesto of January, no mention of secession. Letter from Oromia members of parliament to the government, asking the government to talk. So gradually, we saw start of pressure upon the federal government. And then Shamalis Abdisa made an offer of talks to OLA. OLA has shared its preconditions. It wants Pretoria-style peace process, involvement of third parties, third-party observers, third-party mediators from some countries. So OLA does not want any local mediators. And importantly, OLA has managed to gain support for its position in Oromia. That is why government has been forced to try the option of dialogue. Government PP party members wrote a letter. Opposition parties are speaking in support of OLA. Jawar last week supported external mediation, which is OLA's demand. OLA says that it's difficult to find neutral mediators in Ethiopia. There must be someone from outside to monitor, to guarantee the entire process. And Jawar, who is from Oromo Federalist Congress, top opposition party in Oromia, backed OLA's position. It means that Oromia opposition parties, Oromia ruling party, media, activists, religious faction newly formed, all are supporting in varying degrees OLA's position. That is why we are seeing this change of position of the Oromia government. It is now making an offer of talks to the OLA. And what OLA is demanding is the demand of opposition parties too, and party in power's demand too. Like OLA is in its manifesto published in January, OLA shared some confidence building measures which government must implement before the start of any talks. And one of these measures is that political parties, opposition parties, all must be allowed to work freely. Political prisoners must be released from prisons. Federal working languages, Oromo, Afan Oromo must be federal working language practically, because legally, I think 2 years ago, Ethiopia added some languages as federal working languages apart from Amharic. But OLA wants practical steps. And then OLA spoke about Addis Ababa, that Addis Ababa is part of Oromia. It should be acknowledged. So some of these demands are demands of opposition parties too. And some of these demands are demand of ruling party as well. Ruling party means ruling Oromia Prosperity Party, which is not in opposition perhaps to share some of these demands like Addis Ababa. Yes, some Oromia region based MPs, they claim that Addis Ababa is part of Oromia. It's not part of, it's not a federal capital, or if it is a federal capital, it's part of Oromia as well. So what OLA is saying, opposition parties and party in power say as well, some in private conversations. That is why OLA has managed to acquire support within the government and from opposition parties. Now, government is adjusting itself how to respond to OLA's demand of external mediation and mediation by some countries which can enforce agreements in case of an agreement. Overall, we can sum up that OLA has managed to acquire support in Oromia. But having said that, one important point we must not forget. What OLA is demanding, it cannot be negotiated by OLA and federal government. OLA's demands can only be addressed if there is comprehensive dialogue involving other regions, other ethnic groups as well. So that is why in a separate we will try to analyze OLA's demands and is there any success of the peace process if it started. So far, government agreed to trying the diplomatic option to resolve the conflict because government strategy of continued military operation against OLA is not working, and OLA has managed to survive. It has managed to gain public, political, diplomatic, diaspora support. That is why government has been forced, you can say to some extent, to make this offer of talks to the Oromo Liberation Army. Thank you for watching.